And welcome everyone to Rock M Radio. This is the beginning of a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. We are live on YouTube for Rock M Plus subscribers. It is season 9, Mr. Matthew J. Harris. Season 9 already. We are here at the premiere episode of season 9 here to talk about your Missouri basketball Tigers. This is the only podcast strictly talking about Mizzou basketball. I am your host, Sam Snelling. To be honest, I we've got this new recording software, and I've always been on one side, and now I'm on the other side. So I'm gonna have to revise my little script here and saying that if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll probably see me on your left. That is incorrect. I am now on the right. Joining me, like always, who is on the left, on your left if you're watching on YouTube, Mr. Matthew J. Harris. Matt, how are you?
I'm well. I was just saying I'm super proud of the SEC for getting us a schedule about 2.5 weeks earlier than they usually do. Good on the guys in Birmingham. Way to go! Like, don't sit on it just because you got it. Get it out there. Let's go. So we got the MU non-con schedule about like 3 weeks earlier than expected. We got this earlier. It's nice. I like knowing all the games before mid-August. So
Yeah.
it's been good in that sense. That rollout went smoother than the transition, it seems, to the main website's new platform. But hey, such is life.
So yeah, we are recording this. If you are just listening to us through a regular podcast feed, I hope you are subscribed. By the way, um, we are recording this on Wednesday evening. It's just past 8. Rock M Nation, the uh, the hub of all of this, is sort of been uh, a little bit bumpy the last couple days, but I think we've got it finally sorted out. For anybody who hasn't been paying attention, rockmnation.com, the SB Nation property that we all write for, um, migrated to a new content management system, and that all happened. It was supposed to be, it was supposed to take like, I think they originally estimated like 15 hours, ended up taking about 29 or 30. Um, yeah, so we were down from Monday at about 4 o'clock all the way up until last night about 8 o'clock. Um, it was a long time to be without Rock'em Nation. I think people were panicking, squealing. Rock'em Plus, by the way, Matt, I don't know if you're aware of this, no problems whatsoever.
None.
Has been up the entire time. The
Didn't
forums,
break.
rocking and rolling. Not a lot to talk about at the moment, but it was still online, so we'll take that as a win. Um, so yes, the good news is that we actually have something to talk about because this morning I was thinking that you and I were going to pod, and I was considering pushing this off a day just because there was not really anything to talk about. And then the SEC graced us with the Missouri basketball schedule. Well, the entire league schedule, I should say.
All
But Mizzou
144 games,
is,
baby.
yeah, Mizzou here is the reason we've all gathered, and so let's talk about this. I did sort of cobble together. You
Hmm.
cobbled together a few thoughts on the forums. I cobbled together a few thoughts on Rock'em Nation. So we did have we do have this sort of covered in the online written word side of things. But let's just kind of go through the schedule real quick. I do have this online for anybody that wants to read this. I'm trying to figure out like there's a way we can like share the screen. Um, yeah, let's see how this works. I'm still learning all this new software, so we're gonna share this. And this is the new Rock'em Nation. In fact, let's just take this down so it's not taking up a bunch of white space. Um, yeah, new Rock'em Nation. There's our friend Dennis Gates. So here we go. Missouri's SEC schedule, and I went ahead and added the Bart Torvik preseason rankings so we can kind of get an idea of how tough the schedule is. Opening up at home against the reigning national champions. Um, I think a lot of people are kind of looking at this opening of having Florida at home, on the road at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, and then coming back home facing Auburn as like this murderer's row. I think that's actually a decent opening. One, you get to take a crack at Florida right away. You get
Yeah.
take a crack at Kentucky right away. Um, and those are both teams that are, like everybody these days, heavily reliant on transfers. Thoughts in the opening?
I like it. I think the SEC, you can always sort of divine kind of what the SEC home office thinks the pecking order is going to be based on what are the opening weekend games and what are the closing weekend games. Like, how have they set it up? And, if you, when they put out the early matchups this morning, to me it was notable that Missouri is getting Florida instead of Auburn getting Florida. Like, all the other teams that are sort of forecasted in the top 6 to 7 of the SEC are featured that first week, that first Saturday. So, or that first kind of opening night. So to get in there and to have that sort of, I think I take that as a sign of, okay, maybe there's some respect in the conference office that, let's put a team that could be a contender out here early. Um, Later on in the year, they tended to default more to rivalry games down the stretch, but
Yeah.
still,
And that
so
that's
that's why I think
paid
you see
off to a degree because I mean you're gonna I mean the last few years you're getting like Alabama Auburn, which has been a
Auburn,
big series, and
Tennessee,
uh,
Tennessee,
yeah,
Florida, or
yeah,
Florida,
Tennessee
Kentucky, I should say.
and Kentucky usually see each other, and that's I mean two teams that have been the top half the league for the better part of 10 years. So
Yeah, and this year it might. You hope if both teams play up to their potential, it could be Arkansas, Missouri to close it. So to me, I took it as almost we've talked about what's Missouri going to look like when it's relevant in the SEC. Well, this is what it looks like. You get a marquee matchup on the first night of conference play, and what are you going to do with that opportunity? And to me, I don't mind it because Missouri's coming off a 12-day layoff and after bragging rights. Like, they should be fully rested, fully healthy. They're going to be back from break. They should have some time to lock in on that game. To me, I there's never a good time to get the defending national champions, but to get them for your conference opener, after a layoff, when you should be healthy, when you should be engaged, it's everyone's locked in. That to me is not a bad start. Now the negative drawback I think somebody pointed out was that students won't be on campus, but that building, Mizzou Arena, is going to be packed out for that. So I'm fine with it. I'm excited that the SEC said, hey, let's give you a marquee matchup to start league play. The road trip to Kentucky again. When is a good time to go to Rupp? Like, so. And the other thing
I guess the only time to go that's good to go to Rupp is when you're John Calipari making a return visit with a team that's been in the gutter for most of the year.
right. The thing about Rupp is, like, and we've said it before, is Rupp can be a little sleepy at times. Like, so I'd rather
It's a tough place to win because Kentucky is a tough team to beat, not because it's a terrifying home venue.
correct.
Yeah, it's to me it's always kind of felt like a bit more of like a professional venue. How
Yeah, that's probably
people will sometimes arrive a little bit late, and then you get kind of like the
the older
the
the lower
older
bowl's a little bit
crowd.
older.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get
So
some of the Lexington horse trainers in there that are just in to kind of be seen with a few friends, and yeah, so like it's a big building. It can get loud, but I like of all the environments in the SEC, like I don't think I would put Kentucky as the most intimidating.
But I like the idea that you open up early. If you are, to me, it's a chance to get two really, really good quality wins locked away early. A split there is fantastic. I don't care which one you get. To come out of that at 1-1 is a win. We've talked about, privately, Ole Miss being kind of one of those teams that could be a high variance team this year. The front court is really good there, but we don't know about the back court that Chris Beard has. And, if you look at almost any model or if you look at any sort of forecast, human or computer at this point, they're picked usually between like 8th and 11th right now. So it's not, the same kind of team that I think people are used to when they think of a Chris Beard reload, at least on
Yeah.
first glance. Auburn is another team that, Watkins and I probably consider the highest variance group. Yes, it's great they bring back Todd Pettiford. He's really, really good. He'll be an NBA draft pick, probably in mock drafts all year. Keyshawn Hall can score the ball. He's never done it for a winning team, but we'll see if Bruce Pearl can get that turned around. But after that, there's a lot of questions about this team, and
Yeah.
there's not the same level of depth they've had. I think this is not to say they don't deserve it, but they're getting a lot of deference for Bruce Pearl being the head coach right now. I think if you were to take another coach and put it on this roster, you might say, there's going to be a little bit of retrenchment there.
Yeah.
In a lot of polls right now, they're sort of like, in computer models, they're sitting around 26th, 27th, 28th. If Missouri's a team that's in the same range and they're coming to your building, that's a game where we usually expect home court advantage to win out. So you look at those opening 4 games, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that you could come out of that stretch at 3-1. If you
Right.
do it, if you can. Now, that's going to require you flipping one of the Florida or Kentucky games. But if you come out of that at 2-2, that's not a bad start. Mind you, the trip to Ole Miss is still going to be a quad 1 game, at least on paper right now, and so would Auburn coming to Mizzou Arena. So if you start 2-2 and you get wins over Ole Miss and Auburn, you've still got 2 quad 1 wins in the first 4. You're not hurt. Now, if you believe that if you're really bullish and think Missouri could somehow elbow its way into the larger conference race, 2-2 is not the most ideal start. But if your goal is to make the NCAA tournament and earn a quality seed, 2-2 is not bad. So I don't freak out about that start as much as anything else. I think there's an opportunity to actually give yourself a little bit of momentum if you play it right, and if you've got a team that you think is as good as maybe the staff thinks it is right now.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think like it is tough because the SEC is tough, and no matter what sort of collection of games you're going to get, like you can't play LSU and South Carolina 16 times. Like it's just not how it works. But you do get a road trip to LSU coming off that home game against Auburn. I think you could almost say like this is basically the SEC's version of the schedule lightening up.
Yeah.
Because you go to LSU. If Missouri is, what are they projected in Torvik, like 29th or something like that,
Yeah.
28th?
That's
So if Missouri is that level of team, like they're probably favored going down to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Then you get home against Georgia, home against Oklahoma, 2 teams who are behind you in the ratings. At least
favored.
again, these are all like very early projections from Torvik. You do get a tough roader at Alabama, and then you come back home to Mississippi State. If you like do what you're supposed to do here, and let's say you go 2-2, in the first 4 games, then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 additional wins in your first. So now you're sitting at 5-3. Is that right?
Yeah, you're sitting at 5-3.
5-3 with losses to worst case scenario, maybe Florida, Kentucky, and at Alabama. So 2 road games against top 20 opponents, games you're really not supposed to lose or not supposed to win, and a home loss to a team a lot of people think is a national title contender. And I think they can beat Florida again, but that's sort of beside the point. Which of those games, other than the Alabama road trip, worries you the most?
I think the Oklahoma trip worries me the most. They've got
Oklahoma home game.
Yeah, I think the Oklahoma game worries me just because I think they've got good guard play. Xavier Brown's a really, really good combo guard. Nigel Pack can score it a little bit. They can kind of play off of each other a little. They got Tay Davis, who's a pretty skilled 4 guy. Darion Reed's a former 5-star guy who didn't really crack into the rotation for Bama last year. They just have some interesting pieces, I think, there. The question will be depth. But they've got some guys who are experienced and who can score the ball. And, I think they can sort of match Mizzou in that way. And Tay Davis scores it well enough, is skilled enough to sort of be a counter for Mark Mitchell. So I think that's a game that I look at and I worry about a little bit. Auburn, it's just really hard to tell. I need to see Auburn play at this point. They've got Keyshawn Hall, but again, when you go look at lineup data and you look at on-off data, he scores a lot of buckets, but his teams have typically not succeeded or posted positive net ratings when he's been on the floor. So the question is, can Bruce do what he's done with other guys, like Zep Jasper, Denver Jones, and even Miles Kelly last year? Can he reshape Hall's kind of scoring package to facilitate winning? Kevin Overton was a pretty solid rotational guy at Texas Tech, but they're having to scale him up.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got two guys, Elijah Freeman, who's a Division II transfer, and Abdul Bashir, who's the number 3 JUCO guy coming in. But we know those guys, and we saw it a couple years ago with Chaney Johnson and Chad Baker-Mazar. It took them 20 games to really get their footing right. So is Auburn going to have, a rotation that's ready to go? I'm a little bit skeptical on that. I think Oklahoma probably has some guys that I trust more to produce early. So that's one that I think could be a sneaky challenge. But that's sort of where I'm at right now, at least on a cursory glance at the schedule, at least the front half of the schedule. But I do agree that, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think as far as looking at how the layout goes, I think that's as good of an opening, swing as you could ask for. Then you get a bye week at the end of January, beginning of February, and from there, you take a road trip to South Carolina. Talk about a game that you should probably be able to go on the road and win.
Yeah.
I think South Carolina could be a little stingier maybe than they were last season as far as plucking off a few extra wins that they struggled with last year. But I still think if Missouri is projecting to be the team that they think they can be, if they're like a top 6 level SEC team,
you get that win.
You get that win. You go on the road and you beat a team that is very likely going to be like a Wednesday play-in type. Then waiting for the games, you stay on the road and go to Texas A&M. They're a team that to me is very similar to Oklahoma in that I really like a lot of their pieces.
They have zero bench.
They don't have much on the bench. They don't have it's a brand new build. It could go really well. It could kind of get sideways. I think there's a lot of people who find a lot of comfort in the transfer portal, and
well, Bucky didn't have a choice. He didn't have a roster when he got
exactly
there.
Like this.
He had zero players when he got there.
A&M is a team who anybody that was maybe hanging around followed Buzz, and everybody else in the rotation is graduating. So that team, is kind of in that middle ground where I think that's going to end up kind of being a little bit of a toss-up. Depending on how A&M is playing, I think that's a game that you can get.
Yeah.
Then you're home versus Texas, another team that has completely been rebuilt. Sean Miller is doing a lot of things. I think Texas may be a little bit more consistent, but I don't know that they necessarily have the high-end talent. You're getting them at home, which is good. And then Vanderbilt at home to follow that. Vandy is a team that the analytics seem to like. They're 21st. Seems kind of high for me personally. I don't know that they're quite a top 25 level team, but I think I think based upon what they did last year, how stingy they were at times, and we've seen their ability to to just field a quality team. The question is, I think, who is going to kind of be their primary and secondary scorers. There may be some questions on that side of things.
Yeah, Vandy is, I think, second or third in returning production. So they bring back, I'm looking at it right here. They bring back Devin McLaughlin, a really, really, skilled foreman, but he's not the kind of guy you run your offense through. Tyler Nickel, fantastic floor spacers, can shoot it off movement. Tyler Tanner was a good depth piece at point guard for them. They went out and
they bring back more production than a lot of other teams, but they only bring back 3 guys who are in the rotation.
Correct.
That's still Like,
but
and this is true of Missouri too. Like, Missouri is bringing back more production than just about anybody. But they're still they lost more than 50% of their production, which is significant. So,
now
um,
the one thing you would say about Vandy is we saw Duke Miles play pretty well at Oklahoma last year. He can shoot it. He can be a secondary handler for you. Frankie Collins, not the best scorer, but he can get 2 feet in the paint, draw defenders, and he can at least pitch the ball out. Ike Okereke is kind of a funky four guy. He was a top 50 transfer in Evan Maya's model, and I watched tape of him. He's kind of a bully ball four, jumbo wing. He's just a funky player, but he can score it efficiently, do a bunch of different things for them. He can basically plug in for McGlockton. Tyler Harris is a jumbo wing and a shooter. They got, I think the one thing that Vandy did do pretty well was they went out and they got a guy like Jalen Washington, who is just a former high 4-star big, didn't really ever crack starter status North Carolina, but he can rim roll, he can rim run, he can cut to the short corner, he'll rebound. He's going to give them more size, which they lacked last year. There's some nice pieces here, and they bring back some production. The models, analytic models tend to really value returning production and returning minutes and that continuity. So I can see why they're there. I think Missouri and Vandy are being undervalued to a certain extent, nationally, but we got to see what happens with the pieces that they plugged in. That's going to be a really interesting game. And realistically, that stretch, with Vandy at home, at Arkansas, home to Tennessee, and then at Mississippi State is the one where I get a little bit jumpy. That's which sounds weird given the what the front of the schedule looks like, but that back end stretch is one where I get a little bit of the heebie-jeebies. But we can talk about that a little bit. But there's Vandy is tricky. They want to play the same kind of pace that Missouri does. They're fine getting up and down. They didn't quite. Missouri needed a big run early to build a lead, but they didn't quite put them away. Last year, that was one of those games where we talked about, Missouri didn't really put their foot on their throat. Arkansas away is always tough. Tennessee will have the size and, the guard play, I think, at least with Jacoby Gillespie to pose a challenge at home for Missouri. And then they got to go back to Starkville because that's something that the SEC thinks Mizzou should have to do every single year, it seems like, is go to Starkville. And that's always a tough road trip. So the middle of the schedule is workable, but that 4-game stretch, coming down the run in when your guys are starting to hit the wall, when freshmen are starting to kind of get legs going out from under them, that's a tough stretch to close it. Missouri last year wilted against a soft closing slate. So if you still have a little bit of tremors and trauma from how they closed the season last year, this closing stretch is harder. So we'll see what they do, but that's a stretch of 4 games where I wonder, will they buckle or can they show that there's some resilience and they can at least, if they're in position to get a double bye, can they do what a veteran team should do and finish out and get into the top 4? That's just the stretch that I get fixated on.
I think the for me, like the road game at Arkansas is going to be interesting. Mainly because I think that was about as bad as Missouri played with.
Yeah.
I think possibly the game in Norman.
The one in Norman was worse for me.
Kind of holding hands, and they're sort of 2 worst performances in SEC play last year. To see if they can kind of get that right, because we've seen Dennis Gates teams go down there. We've seen other Missouri teams go down there and play well and have success. I think Arkansas could be kind of like a dark horse SEC title contender. I don't know much of a dark horse they'll be, but I do think that with the amount of talent they have coming back, which is something that's rare for this league, along with the young talent they have coming in. Cal's always got talented guys coming in, and they got at least a couple of replacement level big men.
They got some good backs.
Yeah, like Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle. Trevor Bazile is back for what feels like a 7th year. Hard to believe that guy played for Gonzo Martin. But but yeah, like I look at Arkansas, you know, having to get or getting those guys twice. You do get Tennessee at home. Of the sort of like league contenders at home, you know, I think that's a game that you can get. Tennessee has not always played all that well on the road. Um,
Sometimes they get a little bit they stumble a little bit late in the season.
and and we've seen Dennis Gates give Rick Barnes a lot of fits.
Yeah,
You know, like Tennessee has really had to, a team that is not notorious for scoring has had to bring their absolute A game to get wins over Missouri. Um, yeah, I mean, I said this in my piece today. Like, you going to Norman is one of those things where like when you're good and they're not as good, you think you can go down there and get a win. And yet Missouri, throughout its history, has struggled to win games in Norman, Oklahoma.
yeah,
Whether Oklahoma is good or not, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like it's been a tough venue for them to win. Anytime they want to knock down Lloyd Noble, I'm for it. Build something new so we can create a new history. And then wrapping things up, at least you're at home and getting Arkansas. I think that could kind of lend to a hopefully an inspired performance. And then, for me, it's like anytime you're talking about the second leg of that you're playing a team twice and you only get three of these. Missouri didn't perform well in those last year,
yeah.
and now you're on the road for two of them, but you do get Arkansas at home. So hopefully, yeah. Here's how I looked at, and I will stop sharing so we can kind of go back to our full frame. Hello, everybody. Oh, we have got a commenter. Yes. Senior Josh says that the SEC 16 is waiting for the game by game email. I give them every year. Yeah. And we'll probably have Blake on. Blake is my guy. As our guy, we love Blake Lovell. And as soon as I get that Google form put together, that'll go out. Probably needed like a week or so to kind of get it cobbled together. But that's always an interesting part of this is figuring out what everybody thinks about not just your team but everybody else around the league.
I already did
In
it today,
talking,
man.
what's
Already
that?
did it today. Already did the game by games today.
Yeah, of course you did. Um, so this is how I sort of broke it down on the post. I'm going to get your take on this. I'm going to try my best not to just fully read this out because I did write it. So um, I looked at it like this. I think these are the games that Missouri should be expected slash favored to win, and that is home game against Auburn, at LSU, uh, home against Georgia, home against Oklahoma, home against Mississippi State, at South Carolina, uh, home against Texas, and home against Vanderbilt. That's eight. That's 8 wins.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, I think you take one of Tennessee or Auburn. You know, will be a home win.
Yeah, I mean it's possible that Missouri is favored
And
to
both.
win one of these other what I'm kind of labeling as toss-up games. But I think that those games reasonably Missouri should expect to win right now. Like, you know, and there's always going to be things that happen, but I'm setting the
Yeah,
floor at 8 wins.
yeah, that would seem reasonable. Looking at looking at what you have.
Uh, Now, looking at games that they should probably be expected to lose, and again, going back, they were expected to lose at Florida. We saw how that went. So again, variance can happen. However, I am moving expected losses at Kentucky, at Alabama, at Texas A&M, at Arkansas, and at Oklahoma. I will say this is me being very generous by labeling a home game against Florida as a toss-up, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm putting kind of like their maybe ceiling then at 13-5.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think
You
that's pretty.
still comfortable? So then
With that as the ceiling at 13-5, yeah, that's about where I'd have them. I mean, if everything, if you look at historically in the SEC, there's always one team in the top six that tends to overachieve by 2 or 3 spots that seems to crop up into that top 4. If you think Missouri's in that top 6 or 7, and to get into that top 2 or 3 usually requires 12 to 14 wins. 13-5 is reasonable. If you think that Missouri's a top 7 team and it's going to overachieve, 13-5 is not a. It's not like you're saying they're going to go 15-1 or 15-3 or whatever. I mean, 13-5 will get you a 3 seed in the SEC, 2 or 3 seed. So yeah, that's a pretty reasonable ceiling, I think.
So that leaves 5 games that I think are in the toss-up category, which will be, and again, I feel like I'm being a little generous that I'm putting this in toss-up, but I feel like it's a home game. I think Florida's kind of a little overinflated. They have to replace a lot of guard production. But yes, home game against Florida, at Ole Miss, home against Tennessee, at Mississippi State, and then home against Arkansas. 5 games that could determine whether or not, like you said, you are a 3 seed or you are hoping for like a bubble spot. And that's like how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I might have moved one of the A&M or Oklahoma games down there just because I feel like I'd probably move Oklahoma down just because I think they've got a little bit more proven production there, and that's a tough place to play. And Missouri has never played well there. But if
I've got at Oklahoma as an expected loss.
Okay.
And I've got home against Oklahoma as a win.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to look here and see where I've got all my folks. I've got, if I'm looking at this, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. Yeah. Those are 5 good toss-ups there. I'm trying to see if there's any other road games that I'm into toss-ups.
It's thrilling live television right now.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'd go with those for right now. I haven't enough time to get into the preseason prep work to feel any different.
Yeah, and I'm saying this fully acknowledging that, like, I just started putting together like some of my preseason content, and in doing so, like, I'm already learning things that I don't like about certain teams, which is it's one of those things that, like, as you like get into, and for me it's a lot of like when I'm building the graphics and I'm going through and seeing like how overrated Alabama's transfer class is going to be, and that most of their early preseason hype is a lot of trust in Nate Oates, and obviously Nate Oates has like earned some of that. It's the same thing with Bruce Pearl. They're asking a lot of some of these rosters, and I'm not even saying that like I think Missouri is going to blow the doors off those guys. That's not my point. I'm just saying that I think it's very likely that some of these teams are going to come out of the preseason ranking looking a little rosier than I would expect them to actually perform. And I think like that's the point. Although, in looking at Torvik's rankings, and I even kind of mentioned this today when I was putting together this post. I hadn't really looked at Torvik yet. I was surprised to see Vandy that high. I thought Missouri might be a touch higher, mainly because of the returning production and Mark Mitchell and Anthony Robinson. But the rest of the rankings, I get it. Again, like I think Alabama might be a touch high, Auburn might be a touch high, but I'm probably quibbling over like 5 spots versus Vandy. I think is maybe more like 10 or 15 for me. We'll certainly see, but most of those I feel like are pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I got when I did the first like quick 30-minute run through the schedule. I mean, this is the order I got was Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, Alabama, Missouri. Missouri comes in at number 6, Auburn at 7, Ole Miss 8, Texas 9, Vandy 10, A&M 11, Mississippi State 12, Oklahoma 13, Georgia 14, LSU 15, South Carolina 16. Like, But realistically, if you were to look at my order here, the teams I've got are all pretty much in the same tier. It really comes down to what do you think is going to happen game by game. And this is why we wait until we see the full schedule.
Yeah.
Because when you start going through and seeing how team schedules break down, when they get people, kind of what their home and homes are, if I'm saying Arkansas is going to finish fourth, you know, Arkansas right now, if you were to look at media predictions, is usually around third. All right, so I've got them one spot lower. Tennessee is usually around fifth. I've probably got them a little too high. There are probably 2 wins I was on the fence about giving them, but Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas are all three of the top four. I've got them in mind when you go through and do game by game picks. If you were to look at teams, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Missouri. That's pretty much where I get when I got game by game picks. So when you start going through and really looking at the schedule, you start getting into situations where, okay, Vandy right now in like early media, like in early setups is 8th. If you were to look at Torvik, they're the number 16 in the SEC. So I don't really look at the 21 next to their name. I'm looking at where they're sitting in relation to everybody else. And if you said they're between 6th and 8th in the SEC, I'd say yeah. And I've got them around 8th when I did the game by game pick. So I get focused less on where Torvik's got, teams rated in the bigger picture. I'm sort of looking at what are his tiers right now. So I think right at this juncture, Vandy being somewhere between 6, 7, 8, that makes sense. We're going to see, I think, a pretty clear consensus this year. For all the turnover that's happened, I think we're going to see, pretty well delineated pecking orders in the first 8 to 9 teams. But then once you start to get into the Mississippi States, the Texases, the Ole Miss, the A&Ms, and the Oklahomas, just chuck all those teams in a sack, shake them up, and dump them out. I mean, you can come up with any number of orders there. But I think in general, if you've got Vandy at 21 or number 6 in the SEC, that's not outlandish given what the production they have coming back. So we'll see, though. It's only August. You got 2 months to talk yourself into or out of some teams as you go through the preview process.
Last note before we get out of here. Another comment from our new friend, Senior Josh, who thinks that if they make it to 500 by the bye week, thinks they're going to win 11 plus games in the conference. You want to make a prediction on the final schedule? What'd you end up with game by game?
11-7.
That's 11 plus. There you go.
11-7. And I had them at. I had them tied with Alabama, but the road loss to Bama puts them in the 6th seed.
Oh.
So that's. Don't even get me started. Ole Miss, A&M, Vandy, and A. What did I have here? I think I had Ole Miss, Texas, Vandy, and A&M are all tied at 8 and 10, and it took 3 different tiebreakers to sort that out. So, that's where we're gonna be. I had how many teams did I have between 6 and 8 wins? I had 2, 4, 6. I had 7 teams between 6 and 8 wins.
So, all right.
But yeah, I got Missouri at 11-7 on the first one, which
I feel like that's solid. You get a you get a 1-win improvement on a really good season a year ago. You're continuing to build, feeling good about your recruiting classes, all that kind of stuff. You got to feel positive. I say, win them all. Just do that.
I mean, that's what I can give you the flip game results. I had home loss to Florida, road win at Ole Miss, home loss to Tennessee, loss at State, loss, and then a home win over Arkansas. So I think I had them at 3-2 in flip games. So that's how you get to 11 wins with all the other built-in ones. So
just go 5-0 in those flip games. Now you're 13-5.
Then you're 13.
Like I said, that's probably where I would peg the ceiling. We are gonna get out of here. Wrapping it up in a nice tidy about 40 minutes of Mizzou basketball schedule talk. We're still going to be bi-weekly for the time being, and I'm gonna see about maybe trying to book some guests and the rest of the fall, as we won't have a whole lot of action to talk about unless you want us, logging on and trying to break down Mizzou social media videos, which I doubt a whole lot of people want that, uh, at least in the video format that we're currently in. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. This is the premiere of season 9. Again, I can't believe we've been doing this for 9 years. I can't believe how long I've been at Rock'em Nation. Like, that thing just keeps going.
I haven't broken you.
So tune into Rock'em Nation. Check out the new feed. The new feed is a nice little tool that we're gonna utilize, and make sure you're subscribed to this podcast. I believe the Nates are going to be doing some more podcasting here with the season 9. I think the BK podcast was a hit. I think they're going to talk to SEC Mike. That's happening. So lots of good stuff on the Before the Box Score side. And we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a good night. And I got to hit this leave button. Thanks everybody.